What's going on, guys? It's Tony, Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always. Coming to you to just talk for a little bit and do some off-the-rails conversation. Today I'm going to talk about the NBA. The past couple weeks in the NBA has just been very interesting in my opinion. And a lot of it actually seems to focus around what's happening in Brooklyn. So let's just give a quick rundown. First off, Kyrie Irving, let's start with him. It's either him or James Harden that we start with. Let's start with Kyrie, the bigger pain in the ass in my opinion. Kyrie Irving completely disappeared for a while, broke COVID protocol for the NBA, was showing up at events while not contacting his team, showing just great disrespect yet again to his head coach, Steve Nash. All because Kyrie Irving believes that he is a special and above the rest of us human being. I want to be very clear from the start that my dislike for Kyrie Irving has nothing to do with his race, with his personal beliefs, or with where he went to school, Duke. There are some people that they try to use those things as they try to use race and where he went to school as the main reasons of why people don't like him, and that's not it for me at all. Maybe it is for you, but for me, it's because this dude believes that he is better than the rest of us. Not just in a, I'm smart, but I'm a better human being than the rest of you. I'm sorry, but that is just not the case. Kyrie Irving has made comments in the past, like the Flat Earth comment, or the Pawns comment, that really just did not sit well because of the manner in which he directs those things to the general public. Now, to be fair, he's not the only NBA player that says stupid shit. Dame Lillard, I don't know if he still does this, but for quite some time was actively boasting about how he did not believe in the pandemic. That's dangerous. Kyrie Irving has a much bigger platform than Dame Lillard, though. Kyrie Irving is, in my opinion, much more widely known. And he's also beloved by people because, kind of like what Colin Cowherd said this week on The Herd, the NBA is increasingly becoming a watch the highlights league until the playoffs start. We don't really watch regular season, and Kyrie Irving in a 15 to 45 second clip, highlight reel style, he's amazing. But for a 35 to 40 minute performance, he's really not. Sorry. So Kyrie Irving disappeared off the face of the earth, finally decided to reappear, and even his press conference, he just doesn't get it. And I personally am just disgusted with how out of touch he is and how idolized he is while being that out of touch. I mean, it just blows my mind. But he's not the only member of that Brooklyn organization that is a little bit filled with drama. James Harden. A lot of you have heard me talk about these two, so it's only appropriate that I go from one to the other when venting about what's been going on. But also, James Harden's now in the Brooklyn Nets because he showed up to camp looking like a donut. He gained weight. He was breaking protocol. He wasn't following the rules that the league and the team were setting in place. Forced his way out after 9 or 10 games, and he has set a new precedent. That if I was an owner or a general manager in this league, I'd be scared. James Harden had 3 years left on his contract. This is the longest amount of time left on a superstar's contract when they've been able to force their way out like this for a trade. This is 100% the longest contract that has ever had that happen for a superstar level player. It is very fitting, though, and I say this smiling, that the Brooklyn Nets have lost their first 2 games with the Big Three together, and both of those games were to the lowly Cleveland Cavaliers. Just tickles me. The Brooklyn Nets are going to be a very interesting story the rest of the season. It's going to be a lot of drama. I never thought that Kevin Durant would be the least pain in the ass related person on a team. But Kevin Durant now has an opportunity to prove that he's a number one, that he is the... Now, I'm not talking about this on the court. I'm talking about off the court as well. He's got to get these guys working together because that team has very little room for error. Offensively, they're great. Defensively, they're embarrassingly bad. DeAndre Jordan's not going to get you there. So, Kevin Durant, if Kevin Durant is able to get this team to the finals, I will have considered that a success. And I will have improved Kevin Durant's stature in my own personal rankings of all-time talent. because of what it's going to take from him. It's going to be very similar to what it takes from LeBron to bring talent together. He's going to have to make it work. Now, the other thing I want to talk about and really highlight on is some of the NBA talking heads, these older guys like Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Kendrick Perkins, Paul Pierce, Richard Jefferson. These guys have really started to clash with the younger players that are still actively in the game. Kevin Durant made a comment about Shaquille O'Neal, who, Shaquille O'Neal seems to forget a lot of his past and a lot of what he went through and doesn't have good perspective about what it is that the current generation goes through. Generally, I try to stay away from this old school, new school thing, but Shaq was interviewing Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz and basically said, Donovan, before the game, I said that I don't think you have the skills to take your game to the next level and help this team win. What do you think to that? And Donovan Mitchell gave him all right, thank you. He gave him a 3-word response. Shaq asked him, I think, 1 or 2 more times in the clip, just trying to goad him into saying something that would make Shaq go viral. Charles Barkley has had some of the same issues. I think he had some issues with some of the players from Brooklyn this year alone. And I understand that these guys are paid to play basketball, and there's these other guys who are paid to talk about the basketball that's going on. But I'm really getting annoyed with these old NBA players that hold these guys to this unrealistic expectation that they themselves did not try to achieve in their careers. Shaquille O'Neal has a career where he's had some sketchy moments along the way. Charles Barkley's had a career where he's had some sketchy moments along the way. But it's funny because a lot of these older players seem to forget that. One of the best examples of this, and really where I think it started, was a few years ago when JaVale McGee was playing for the Golden State Warriors, and Shaq was ruthless to him. It wasn't Shaq trying to be funny and talk about his basketball playing. It was Shaq trying to be insulting. And just like I don't care for Kyrie Irving because he talks down to people and assumes he's better than them, I don't care for Shaquille O'Neal for the same reasons. Shaq is a very lovable, larger-than-life person, but he seems to make this decision really, really fast and loose, where he decides if you're above or beneath him. And if you're beneath him, like he perceives JaVale McGee, he's going to attack you. He's going to come at you recklessly. Shaq's been saying that he's the designated big man of the NBA's big man club on who he's going to let in. Remember, he was ripping on Rudy Gobert this year when Rudy Gobert got his contract. Let's look at this for a second. Let's just point out the NBA back when the 90s were our current time, and when we had Shaq and Charles Barkley and some of these older players that maybe are harder on the young guns. There wasn't as much money. The league wasn't as popular. And they weren't exposed to fans the same way that a Kevin Durant is now. I don't like that Kevin Durant feels the urge to have burner accounts. But Kevin Durant's also grown up in a time where he has to deal with social media. Same with LeBron James, Steph Curry, James Harden, Kyrie Irving. Any of these guys. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. The list goes on. Tatum and Brown from Boston. The list of players that really has to be aware of what's going on social media is every player in the NBA. Fans are really ruthless to them. But I think that some of these older heads, these talking heads, the ones that Kevin Durant's talking about, where he says, maybe they need to retire, they need to keep in mind that the league has changed a lot. There's more money. People are going to be friends. They're not going to have that hatred. People are going to create super teams because they're friends, because there's more money, because there's not that hatred. It's easier to do those things. We are in a time of player empowerment. Listen, do you think that some of the players of previous generations are looking at these guys now and thinking, man, if I only had that when I was playing? I mean, whether it's the technology, the science, or the player empowerment, just one of those three things would be just huge for players of previous generations. But it does concern me that we're starting to see this very clear over the past few years. Once you retire, you kind of turn into the I'm going to rip into the NBA guys. Now, Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley are by far the worst offenders. I think Charles Barkley is pretty damn funny and entertaining. Like I said, Shaq, I've always kind of been hit and miss with him. But I think there's some valid points to this. They didn't grow up the same way that these NBA players did. They didn't experience the same things. The world has changed a lot. And these NBA players now have to interact with fans a lot differently than what players of previous generations did. So they hear about these things. Now, I'm not saying that Shaq and Charles and these other older players like Kendrick Perkins even, that they didn't have criticism. But Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley played in a time when newspapers were the main way to get some of these stories out. You didn't have journalists going on TV shows just talking for hours on end, debating about if you're a choke or a failure or a bust at the draft spot, or the years we've spent scrutinizing LeBron, scrutinizing Kevin. That's the world these guys live in. So there has to be a little bit more freedom from the previous generations and understanding, like, yes, there is more money. Yes, there is more science and technology that's extending their careers. Yes, the game has improved drastically, or at bare minimum has changed drastically. But they also are fighting some very different things. And I think that the support from the older generation would be good. Shaq, Charles, Perkins, Jefferson, Paul Pierce, Jalen Rose, Kenny the Jet Smith, Chris Webber, Isaiah Thomas, like all these guys that are doing these shows and talking and whatnot, they can sit there and call it as they see it. But I think that to tell a player directly what you think, the way Shaq did with Donovan Mitchell, is inappropriate. To focus on the contracts and how that wasn't good enough in your day, well, the game has changed a lot. And I just think that there's poor perspective being shown on both sides, but really the older generation's the one that needs to just shut the fuck up. And that's truly how I see this, is the older generation just needs to shut up. They need to let these guys play basketball, let them live their lives, give your input, and that's fine. But I think to bring on players and tell them that you don't think they're good enough to raise their game, to call out players for their contracts, to do the things that when you were a player you got mad at journalists about, it says more about these older guys than what I think we're willing to admit. So NBA's been exciting so far. I'll definitely give you that. Brooklyn seems to be the epicenter of drama right now. Still smiling that they've dropped 2 games back to back with Kyrie and James Harden. It's funny. I mean, it really is. Like, you look at the fact that this Brooklyn Nets team and just the issues that Kyrie has created for himself. And we didn't even talk about the coaching comments that he's made, or last season, his first preseason photo shoot with the Nets, and he refuses to, I think, take off a hat. Refuses to talk to media. I mean, it's crazy. James Harden showing up looking like a jelly donut. He's trying. I mean, you can tell now he's trying. It's funny. James Harden doesn't want to take any blame for the fact that Houston tailored their world to him. He just wants to say it's not good enough, even though they did everything they could for him. And then, of course, these old talking heads. I hope that Shaq cools off on this, because I think that going after current NBA players is a dangerous game, my friend. And I think that because of how NBA players are growing up now in the AAU system, everybody's more friendly. Contracts aren't as hard to come by. There's tons of money. Social media has made the world so small. And for the most part, these millennials want to collaborate. They don't want to isolate anymore. They see that some of these players of older years spent, decade chasing down just to make it to the finals once, but never got it done. So, I mean, like, you could look at like a Reggie Miller, illustrious career, what was it, like 20 years in Indiana, made it to the finals once. Got mudhole stomped. You know what I mean? That's the world that these guys are living in is just a lot different. And that's fine. It's completely fine for things to evolve. I just really hope that, I guess three main takeaways from this is I hope Kyrie can stay out of drama. If he has any, mental issues or whatever, I hope that he's getting those addressed. I really do. Mental health is not something I would take lightly, but respect towards your coach or your one-up, your teammates, that means a lot too. James Harden, I hope he just is able to play within this system, man. I mean, that's going to be a good story. And I hope that some of these NBA guys that talk about the league understand that it's becoming more and more apparent that they have a grudge. Tell me what you guys think. What do you believe is the right way to go on these topics? Do you think that I'm a little hard on Kyrie Irving? Do you think that James Harden maybe should have given Houston less time or more time? And what do you think about these old NBA players that are taking these analyst jobs and really going pretty hard on the young guys? I appreciate you guys listening so much. My name is Tony K. This is Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always, and we will talk to you next time.